So, awareness of hazards or danger. So we touched on this a little bit in terms of safety, in terms of moving around, communication, those kind of things. But there is also the cognitive element to consider. So this might relate back to earlier questions. Let's just roll back to see exactly which one it was we were talking about. So getting around safely, question 8. So there may be some crossovers with that question. That's absolutely fine if there is. And it's a good place where you can actually link those things and talk about the different elements. But be clear as to what that means. So awareness of hazards or danger is your cognitive ability to be aware of a hazard or a danger. Okay, so if, for example, if we're using the Meniere's disease example, someone with Meniere's disease gets a lot of dizziness, the physical problem of dizziness will mean that they can't get around safely. However, that dizziness also brings with it a cognitive impairment and brain fog. Someone with fibromyalgia might have brain fog, or any other long-term health condition that makes you very fatigued might get brain fog as well. And it might make you a bit slow to react to things or to even notice things. There might be a sensory element to that. Again, that would relate more to question 8. But if somebody has an overloading of sensory input, as in the case with autism and things like that, where there's too much going on and you can't focus on one thing, that might make it difficult for you to be aware of a hazard or a danger that's immediate. So think about those kind of things. It does also include more seemingly mundane tasks, such as boiling a kettle or cooking on a stove, operating sharp objects, things like that. There is an element with this where it could come into mental health as well for somebody with schizophrenia, or type 1 bipolar disorder. That could be quite a serious thing. If they're handling sharp objects like knives, they might self-harm or they might harm somebody else with that. Are they able to, understand what the best situation is? Are they suffering with delusions that would confuse them or get them to interact with things in an improper way? So think in terms of those things. Also, a person who's very anxious or depressed might use self-harm as a way of relieving stress and anxiety, and whilst I don't encourage that at all, it is something that does happen. So be thinking, is that something that you're possibly likely to do if somebody isn't around to kind of keep their eye on that sort of thing? It might be that you're living at home with parents and they've said, right, we're going to put certain locks on the drawers to prevent those kind of things happening. So have a think. Do you need someone to stay with you for most of the time to stay safe? So that could be that they're looking out for you to make sure that you don't injure yourself because you're not aware of certain dangers or hazards. Or it might be that they are keeping their eye on you so that you don't do anything dangerous or hazardous with intention towards yourself, things like that. Think also about, when you're writing your answer to this, how you cope with that. How do you manage? What are the ways of doing that you've come up with to keep you safe? And think about the impact of that on you as well. Again, as always, they give you a very small space to write about this. On some of the forms I've seen, you can get quite a bit more space with these questions. But even so, if you haven't got enough space, do continue on a separate sheet of paper if necessary. So, yes, that's important. Again, this, just going back to that quickly, that might also relate to seizures, fits and blackouts as well. People with dissociative identity disorder, for example, might switch between an identity and then lose memory or lose safety. A person who might have vacancy type seizures might seem as if they're awake and paying attention, but actually they're just staring into space and they're not aware of what's going on around them. So bear that in mind too.